right, Jerry. So that was about as professional as I've ever been with with the fade out of the video and the fade out of the music. And woke in the green. I'm calling this now in the green room
In the green room.
because the green room, yeah. So
It is
and a
green, I
little
see.
well, yeah, yeah. So that I started thinking about the kind of conversations we always have when we're before gigs and after gigs and during breaks.
Yeah.
And this is sort of how I have a conversation with you. If we were on a gig, we'd be sitting and I'd be asking you things and talking about your stuff. And so I've decided to call this in the green room. So today I'm in the green room with Jerry Cortez of Tower of Power.
Howdy.
And we opened with the last track of the new record, Step Up, which features you on guitar. And as I was telling you ahead of time, when I listened through all of that, the guitar work on the record is phenomenal. I mean, it's just, and I was saying, it's so good. And before we started, we were talking about things that we would talk about. I wanted to ask you, and you answered this really well. So the kind of guitar work that you do with Tower of Power, from the time I was a kid growing up listening, is that how guitar players comp behind the horns and play those kinds of grooves? And it's a real, to me, it's a real specific style, and that's what you do on that record. And what was your answer if I said, uh, okay, come and play this track, but I want it to be that style? How would I ask you to play that style?
Right. Well, in this case, with this particular song, it's kind of like Earth, Wind, and Fire meets chicken picking. So it's just got
I
that
like that.
that 16th note thing, which is which the band well, James Brown, you got to give credit to
Mhm.
James Brown. That's where so much of that um, came from. But I think the Tower of Power specifically took it to another level with the 16th note thing. Because I used to always think when I was a kid growing up listening to that stuff, I used to think, man, there's so much going on. How are
Right,
they not stepping on each other? It's
right.
just amazing to me how much stuff is going on and nobody's in anybody's way. I just thought it was really pretty amazing. So there's this like this constant kind of 16th note, on their up tempo stuff like the song we just heard, and their
Right.
classic tunes like What Is Hip and so many other songs like that. And there's just like this constant 16th note feel kind of going on, and you just kind of grab onto those little spaces in between, and that's kind of how I approach the guitar parts. And I
Yeah,
find that I can actually get pretty busy, and I'm still really not in the way because I've really kind of found my own little place in the mix, so to speak. But really, it's like the musical mix of notes and things, and where everything is lying. So I don't know if that makes any sense, but
it does
uh,
make sense. And it's interesting. It makes me want to ask you more questions because um, a lot of times, especially when things get so busy. So let's say I listen to Roger and I listen to Dave and I listen to Mark and I listen to you, and as you said, we're really busy, but we're not in each other's way.
right,
There are a lot of times when I'll go out and hear bands and they may not be playing half as much, but what they're playing is in each other's way.
yeah,
you know so uh it's amazing because when I listen, especially to that record, when you sit and listen to just what Dave's playing or just what Roger's playing, just what you're playing, and pick it all out, there's a lot of stuff going on. I mean, you
yeah, there
guys
really is.
are really like digging in.
Yeah,
and, and how and so and then going back all the way to when Tower first came out and that busyness, the only other band to me that had, and you mentioned this before we went live, was Earth, Wind, and Fire
yeah,
for the guitar work that you guys are doing. And that's the other thing in that band in particular. The guitar player and keyboard player may have been playing the same things, but they were never in each other's way. And
correct.
that's just a real style that not a lot of people do. And
Right.
it's amazing that you guys can stay out of each other's way yet play so much stuff.
Right. It is pretty amazing. The places where you have to be careful is in places where there's vocals, and then somebody decides to play a fill, that sort of thing. It's usually in songs that have a little bit more air in them, like ballads and other tunes that are kind of more medium tempo things.
Right.
So we kind of find our own little sonic place to fill, and typically, I mean, there's places where I'm expected to fill, and the bass player's not, and there's and vice versa. The bass player is expected to fill, and I'm not. So there's places like that, but then there's things that are open, and we just kind of watch and listen for each other. And there's other places where we just like fill in between a vocal, and it's not like we're filling in between every little vocal hold or anything like that. But
Right.
so that's where we have to kind of be kind of on, not so much on guard, but just listen and watch, kind of thing. So, but otherwise, just when it comes to the really busy stuff, it's really a lot of fun to be a part of that 16th note bed. It
Yeah.
really is fun. It's
Yeah.
really fun, and I try and find new ways to approach that 16th note bed, if you will, and yet stay true to the original recordings, especially those songs that are classic songs that we play, like "What Is Hip" and stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
Um, uh,
because it's an amazing track. That "What Is Hip" is still amazing. It's still an amazing song for me to play. I'm never tired of it. People say, "Hey, you're tired of playing this gig, aren't you? You're tired of all these songs?" It's like,
no,
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 no, I'm never gonna get tired of these. Well, you must
no.
be tired of this song. No, not tired of that one. Well, you must be tired of that one. No,
Look,
it's all
I
good.
gotta say, and I was talking to Tommy about this. That short time when I was out with you guys, and I was listening to all the songs, and what I thought was interesting, as a fan listening to all of the songs, is it didn't seem to matter what song you ended with, it was or and did an encore with. Any song in the book could be a closer or an encore, and people would still go nuts.
Yeah, it's true.
It's like all of the songs, especially from a fan's point of view, it didn't matter what you played as your last song or an encore. It still would have been the perfect song because there's
Yeah,
so many that are good.
it's
Now,
true.
yeah. So, but I also want to go back a little bit. So you grew up in the Bay Area, right?
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
And so when you were a kid, what were you doing and playing? Where'd you grow up in San Jose area?
Yeah, I did. I grew up in Santa Clara,
Santa
and
Clara.
started playing. As soon as we got instruments, we were playing in the garage. And in fact, my brother didn't even have a drum set yet. My brother's a drummer. My brother Robert,
Hmm,
and he had he had a drum pad and sticks, and I had an acoustic guitar. And then we had some other neighbor kids that had acoustic guitars, and we just started trying to bang out songs,
right.
on our own. And then, eventually I got an electric guitar, and when I was 10 years old, and really just practiced a lot, just played a lot, and tried to play along with records, and picking up the needle, and gosh, today's technology I really could use back then,
Yeah.
but because I ruined a lot of records picking them up constantly, but learned a lot of tried to learn a lot of solos note for note way back in the day, and then finally got into my teens. I was actually starting to nail some of these solos I started trying to play when I was 10, 11, 12,
Mhm.
and then started playing professionally when I was 16. I remember my brother was in a top 40 band at the time, and he the drummer, excuse me, not the drummer, but the lead singer broke his arm, and he couldn't play guitar. He was the guitar player as well. So
Mm.
I got called in, and I remember I was like my sophomore year in high school. I was doing gigs, and the next morning I'd be bright-eyed and bushy-tailed for first period 8 o'clock, and I had gone to bed at 2 a.m.
Mm.
So it was pretty fun being able to, and at the time they actually passed a law in California. You could be 18 and play in a club as long as you didn't drink. So I never did drink either. So, and I wasn't interested then, and I'm still not interested in drinking. So
Well,
it worked out pretty well for me. And I looked the part. I looked 18 when I was 16. So
when I was that age, you couldn't let me in a club, and I would say, "Don't tell me that I can't drink." When I was
yeah,
that,
yeah,
like, I would find a way. Uh,
yeah. And
what
my
was
brother didn't drink either, so we were
what
fine.
what was your first gig? What was that band? The first gig you did, and what was your first major gig you did?
Probably, well, I'm trying to think of one of my first major gigs. Probably working with Jesse Colin Young, singer-songwriter Jesse Colin Young, and that was really a lot of fun. I got a chance to play with him, but you know what? They were for me. They were all major gigs. I mean, each new gig just seemed to like get better and better. Like the first gig, first band I ever played with, and then the one following that, and then it just so on and on. It just the gigs just always seem to get better and better all the time. Like
Mhm.
went up to another level musically,
Right.
um, and then along the way, you know, I mean, I'm still friends with people I was in some of the very first bands with. I'm still friends with all these guys, you know,
Yeah.
which was really, and ladies, and which is amazing, you know. With social media, thankfully, you know, we can all keep in touch with each other.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's pretty amazing. So, but that Jesse Colin Young playing with him, it was actually the Youngbloods.
The
And
young.
yeah,
I
yeah,
was.
come on, people now, smile on your brother. Yeah,
Yeah.
so that was really a lot of fun playing with him, and got to play in a lot of different, you know, kind of travel around the country. He did play outside of the country, not when I played with him anyway, but he played all over the U.S. though,
Mm.
and then eventually he decided that he wanted to go, he wanted to be, you know, come up with the times a bit more, and so he wanted to have like the Jesse Colin Young band. He basically fired the young blood guys, and he started like and he kept me and some of the other guys that were in the band, and so then he wanted to go like this '80s thing, you know, and
Mm.
then and that was short lived. Once we actually polished it all up and presented it, he was like, you know, I don't like this at all. I want to go back to my roots, and he said.
Oh.
He goes, in fact, I'm dissolving this whole band. I just want to go out and play acoustic music. Jerry, you interested? And so it's like, yeah, sure. So I actually ended up doing 3 records with him, and Jesse Colin Young records,
Yeah. Yeah.
and that was really, I actually learned a lot musicianship wise. I mean, my musicianship rose quite a lot after working with him. He's like about 14, 15 years my senior, and by the
Mm.
time I met him, he had already been around the block, you know, as a solo
Yeah.
artist, and then with Youngbloods, and then a solo artist again, kind of thing. So.
Mhm.
So I learned a lot from him working in the studio, just musicianship on stage, you know, performing and just living the life, you know. So it was a great experience for me.
You know, what everybody that I talk to that does performing, musicians, um, always say something about learning how to perform. You
Mm,
know, when we're kids and we're learning how to play, we don't necessarily think about how we perform and what we learn about how we perform.
right.
And there's so much that goes into that. And you mentioned that too, when learning how to perform and play. And between that and when you got the gig with Tower of Power, when did the gig from Tower of Power, when did you start doing that gig?
January 14th, 2010. So it was my first show
Yeah,
with
so 10,
Tower of Power. Yeah,
yeah.
10 years now.
Now, but our paths had crossed a few times in all of that in the Bay Area. I mean, I know that we may have met or something, but your name came up a lot. Weren't you playing with Tony Lindsay and some different people like that around it?
Some a little bit, but I just kind of here and there with Tony Lindsay. I was never in Spangalang. They never actually had a
So,
guitar player. So,
yeah,
but yeah, our I cross paths with Tony quite often, and in different situations, not only on live performances, but sessions.
yeah,
He
yeah.
was the vocalist on a lot of sessions I did. I did a fair amount of session work in the Bay Area, which was really fun
Mostly,
for
right?
me.
Didn't you do a lot of session work?
I did. I
Yeah.
did. And that was also a great learning experience for me as well. And I remember there was a time when through the 80s, I did a lot of stuff with 80s and even early 90s, a lot of stuff with drum machines because
Oh,
everybody was doing all these demos and
yeah.
recordings. And I did like about 1,000 titles with Muzak, the
Mm,
company Muzak, and they were using all digital, you know, drums, and then eventually they started using a real drummer. Thankfully, that was amazing. But I noticed that my time got better. Just, you know,
oh,
working with something that never really budged. You know, the time never budges at all.
yeah.
So I
Yeah.
still tend to rush. I tend to be somebody who rushes.
Well, you
Uh,
stylistically, though, that's kind of the Tower of Power's groove a little bit, though. Being,
Absolutely,
you
absolutely. So it works, you know. And I grew up with a drummer, my brother Robin, and he was actually a big Tower Power fan, and he still is. And so he always kind of had that sense of urgency when he played
yeah,
drums, and he still does. He kind of has that kind of sitting on the edge
yeah.
of the clock, and I do too. And that's but
I got to say, at my age, and it doesn't matter what I do, there's something about Tower of Power. There's a mystique from a musician standpoint, a mystique, and it's sort of like in awe and fan. I will forever be a fan. And I mean, you get that even with all of you guys in the band. You're even fan of the music yourselves.
Oh,
It,
absolutely. Yeah,
you,
I'm a fan myself. I remember going to see him in 1972 at Spartan Stadium in San Jose, and Rick
right?
Stevens was singing,
Yeah.
and uh, and they didn't even have a keyboard player yet. It was like they're kind of the original lineup for the most part.
Hmm.
It was, I think Bump City had just come out.
Boy, what a great
Yeah,
record.
yeah, it is a great record. I remember really enjoying the whole band. I just like
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
was really just everybody really was a standout. You know, I mean, they all played together so well, but individually you could see their how good they all were.
Yeah. Now, I want to shift a little bit to you also do a lot of solo work, and when we were a week ago, we were talking a little bit about some of the solo stuff that you do, and you have a couple of CDs out. One of which I wanted to get to and play, and then I want you're going to play a couple of songs for us.
Yeah, you bet.
But do you have that your solo CD there?
I do. I do. It's called From the Ground Up. I don't know if you can see this. It's maybe
Yeah, from the ground up,
okay.
it can be
Yeah,
found on iTunes and Amazon.
iTunes. Uh huh.
And, we're going to play a
From
song from
available now.
available now. Please, you know what? Now would be a good time to buy it because we aren't gigging.
Yeah, yeah. And here's the Tower Power CD as well.
Oh yeah, Step Up. We're going to play a little bit off of that too. I love that record, man. That's so good. And
Oh,
we'll
thank you.
talk about some of your guitar work on there because uh, all of the when we were first started talking about the different styles, you do a lot of different things. You do several different tracks on some of those songs where you're doing some chording, comping, and some uh, chicken picking, like you were saying, and some
Hmm.
different things. So we'll dig into that. But
Okay.
let's play this. Is medicated goo.
Really falling possum, what's wrong with you? Your body's kinda weak and you think there's nothing we can do. Good golly, Polly, shame on you. Cause Molly made us do that'll make
Yeah,
a
Jared.
little out of you. So follow me, ain't it good for you? That good old fashioned medicated goo. Ooh, ain't it good for you? My own homegrown recipe will see you through. Freaky Freddy Frolic had some, I know. He was last seen picking green flowers in a field of snow. Get ready, Freddy, the sugar grow. Mother Nature just blew it and there's nothing really to it, I know. So follow me, ain't it good for you? That good old-fashioned medicated goo. Ooh, ain't it good for you? My own homegrown recipe will see you through. talking to their friend. Friends and neighbors, Charles the door. They caught a little whiff, now they're digging it and seeking more.
All right, I'm going to pull it down a little bit. And Jerry, I want to ask you, you know what that reminds me a lot? And your voice, it reminds me a lot of Little Feat.
Oh, really? Interesting.
What do you know? I don't know. I was thinking when I heard when you said that was you singing, I'm going like, God, what an amazing voice! But it sounded like somebody else, and I was trying to think of who it really sounded like, but it kind of reminded me of Little Feat.
Oh,
You know,
cool.
just that
I love
group.
Little Feat.
Right?
Take that as a
Yeah.
compliment. I love Little Feat. It's a Traffic song. It's a Steve Winwood song.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Did,
I think
yeah,
I can't remember what album it's on. I could see the cover, but I just can't remember the name of it.
yeah.
I think it's the one that has Feeling All Right, maybe. I know Dave Mason was in the band still, I think. But anyway,
Yeah.
yeah, a big Steve Winwood fan, one of my musical heroes actually.
You know, I listened to a little bit of Traffic when I was younger, but not that much.
Huh.
And I didn't really become a fan of some of that stuff, like Genesis and everything, until I got older.
Yeah.
You know, when I started appreciating more what all of the music was.
Sure.
So now we practice this ahead of time, and you have a couple of original songs you want to play. And
Yes. Sure.
you want to do one of those now?
Yeah, I'd love to.
Now, a little bit, I want to give a little bit of forewarning to my sonic skills. Now, Jerry and I and Skip last night on this platform, we can only get the quality of music to a certain degree. So this is about as good as we can get it ahead of time. A disclaimer in case it doesn't sound as good as we know Jerry sounds.
All right. Well, this song is called "One and the Same," and this song is. Can I tell you a little bit about the song?
Absolutely.
Well, the lyrics come loosely based on an incident that happened in the catechism. Actually, when I was a young kid, well, I was in third grade actually, and time after time, I was hearing it seemed like every catechism session, I was hearing from the nuns that Catholics were the one true religion, and that anybody who wasn't a Catholic was going to hell. And so, this is after the fourth or fifth time I was here. I heard a nun say this, and so I challenged her, and I said, "So do you mean to tell me that the Lutheran minister who lives across the street from us, who has 7 kids, and they're all like the best students in school, and they really were." I said, "You mean to tell me they're going to hell?" And before she answered, I continued, "There's a Jewish rabbi behind the Lutheran minister, and I know that he is faithful as well. And next to the Lutheran minister is are Presbyterians, and I know that they are faithful. They go to church every Sunday. And there's a Mormon family that lives down the street, and I know that they go to church every Sunday. Do you mean to tell me they're all going to hell?" And she says, "Yes, they're all going to hell." And I said underneath my breath, "You're going to hell." And,
right?
Yeah, and she said, "What'd you say?" And I didn't answer. Somebody else answered for me. Some young girl. And she goes, "He says you're going to hell." So about a half an hour later, my dad comes to pick me up, and I actually, and when I saw my dad show up at the classroom door, I was like, "Oh my gosh, I'm dead." So we get in the car, and my dad looks over at me. We're about to drive off. He looks over and he says, "You don't have to go to catechism anymore." So, but I grew up with a nun as well. So I mean, it wasn't like I was being this totally defiant kid. I totally had respect for the nuns. I really did. And my aunt was a nun. My loving aunt Henrietta, my mom's older sister. She was only a year or two older than my mom, and she was a nun for 11 years. And she used to come from the convent from Springfield, Illinois, and visit us and sit at the dinner table and full regalia, and she just seemed like this structure of a human being. And I remember just looking up to her, and she was a big woman anyway, but she just was, I just really respected her. But she would sit at our dinner table and tell these jokes, and she had like a comedic timing as well, which was really. And most of the time we'd say, "What? Where'd you hear this joke?" I mean, like kind of raunchy jokes, and she'd go, "Oh, the convent."
Oh,
so so anyway, this is a song kind of loosely based on those lyrics, and it's called "One and the Same." I wake from sleep, I hear the news of differences how we must choose in the realm of what's to believe. When I take all only to deceive. If there are hosts to be found, listen, uncover the sound. One and the same, one and the same, you and I. Comes a time when I peer through the gate of selfless love and never hate, covered blind to the wonder of all. Ponder the thought, or should he fall? A matter of time in between, the fate of an end unforeseen. One and the same, one and the same, you and I. It don't matter anyway. You go hearing things I say. I dream a day to wander through in a place that holds a clue. Water found buried below, given new life won't let go. One and the same, one and the same, you and I. One and the same, one and the same, you and I. Do-dee-woo-doo-dee-woo, do-dee-woo-doo-dee-woo-doo, do-dee-woo-doo-dee-woo-doo, do-dee-woo-doo-dee-woo-doo.
that was beautiful, Jerry.
Thank you.
Oh man. Now, is that on a current CD, or is that going to be on something that's coming out?
That is on the title track of a CD yet to be released. That's going to be out later this year. Fingers
Uh-huh.
crossed. I was actually supposed to be in Seattle at the beginning of April, putting some finishing touches on the mixes actually.
Hmm.
And there's still a couple songs I'd like to add some enhancements like strings and stuff like that. But it's mostly done. It's the CD. It's just a couple loose ends mostly, and then mastering. But other than that, it's pretty close.
Where did you record most of it?
Um, Most of it was recorded, like the initial tracking was done in Nashville. Same with From the Ground Up.
From the ground?
They were done in Nashville, and
Okay.
uh, and then overdubs and things like that. Like most of my overdubs, I did some recorded in Nashville myself, but then most of my overdubs, like some lead vocal things, um, some guitar parts and things like that, were done in Seattle. And
Uh-huh.
then I'd even put a little finishing touches right where I'm sitting. Added some things here
Yeah,
and there.
you showed me a little bit of your studio. You have a pretty nice studio there.
Well, thank you.
And I wish I could have that studio.
Well, I'm really grateful to have it because where I'm
Yeah.
sitting now, it was like a workstation. And I used to live in when my wife and I lived, when Kathy and I lived in Marin. I had this same setup in our living room, and I can't turn the camera around to show you, but it's a fairly good sized piece of furniture with gear in it and a computer and studio monitors and all that kind of stuff. And
Right.
it's white. And I used to tell her. It's like I used to apologize. I'd sit here, I go, honey, I'm really sorry that this eyesore is sitting in our living room, but I promise I'll have a proper room for it someday. So we've been here for 13 years now, and I
13
finally have
years.
I finally have a proper room for it. Yeah.
And
So,
you live in Salt Lake City?
yeah, well, outside of Salt Lake City in a place called Saratoga Springs. Yeah, it's
Uh-huh.
lovely. Yeah, it's a little
Yeah.
cold right now, hence the
Yeah.
long sleeves. But
Yeah.
yeah, other than that, it's a lovely place to live, and we like our lifestyle here. It's good. It's a good place.
It's less expensive, right? Than
Quite a bit, quite a bit. But everything's still the same price at Costco. Airline
right,
tickets still the same, and all that kind of stuff.
right, right.
It's mostly just the housing things and
Sure.
property taxes, that's sort of
Yeah.
thing. But yeah, but I like I miss the people in the Bay Area. That's the main thing I miss
Mm,
about the Bay Area. And
yeah.
sometimes I miss the Bay Area itself. I was in the Bay Area recently. We played in Monterey, and then the following night we played in Napa for a couple of nights, and then I stayed over for several days and visited my brother and my dad. My brother lives in Santa Rosa. My dad lives in Santa Clara, the house I grew up in. My mom passed away in 2007, but got to spend some time with both of them. And the final evening I spent with my dad. He's in a jazz big band, and I went and sat in with him. I played with him that night, and
Really?
had a
In this,
great time.
what
Yeah,
band?
they're
What?
called Swing Solution, and
Oh,
that's not the only one he even plays with. He plays with several of them. But that was
wow.
that was really fun. And I
Yeah.
came away from it going, I gotta find a rehearsal band in Salt Lake, because this was fun, and just to be able to, hone my reading skills, which needs work. I transcribe all the time, but sight reading skills
Well,
are a whole
sight
other thing.
reading. Yeah,
It's
it's real easy to lose sight reading skills
Oh
for me
yeah,
anyway. If you don't do it
yeah.
for a
Yeah.
while.
I
Yeah.
never really had them. I don't think I really, I played in high school band and sang in choir, but
Mhm.
that was probably the height of my sight reading skills. But
Right.
I really don't, I never really had like super great sight reading chops. Like, again, I transcribe all the time, but
Yeah.
that's a different thing.
It is. It's a
But
real
yeah, and I find that actually really relaxing. Uh, Transcribing.
transcriber.
I transcribe out something. I transcribe something every week. It seems like, so either for my students or just for myself. So
Yeah.
it's a
Do
good
you have
thing.
a lot of students?
I have a few, and I've picked up a few. Doing online. I teach online lessons, and that's really a lot of fun. I get a lot of enjoyment out of that. Right now, the students that come to my house, we're kind of social distancing, so we're uh, we're not doing it for now. And a couple
Yeah.
of them have just that thought are thinking about doing the online thing. So
Yeah, a lot of people are using Zoom for doing lessons. Zoom instead of FaceTime, they're using that Zoom thing because
yeah, I've heard of that. I have to look into the Zoom thing as well.
yeah. Um,
Yeah,
um, you wanted to play another song from
sure, sure.
the
And
CD.
another guitar. Let me turn this off.
Yeah. And do you have a title for your new CD yet?
Yeah, it's called One and the Same. That was
Oh, one and the
the yeah
same.
the last song I just played. And so this next one is called Love is the Answer, and it's written by myself and Alex Call. And Alex Call co-wrote this song. Jenny 8675 Sheep. Yeah. He wrote that one along with another wonderful songwriter named Jim Keller. And we actually were in a band together. I was in a band with Alex Call and Jim Keller, and we also had David Jenkins from Pablo Cruz, singer and guitar player, another great singer-songwriter, and Lauren Rowan, another great singer, songwriter, guitar player, and singer. And a lot of people know him from his older brother Peter Rowan, who's been like a country bluegrass sensation for many, many years. And they had a thing together themselves, the Rowan brothers. There's three brothers actually. Chris is one of the other brothers. But anyway, so we had this band. It was called a short-lived band. We mostly were playing acoustic music and just kind of playing our tunes. And we referred to ourselves as the Raging Bulls. But in private, we refer to ourselves as the Aging Bulls, and that was around. That was in the early '90s, I think, something like that. But that was a really, really fun band, inspiring too. It was fun to be. I had just as much fun just hanging out and rehearsing with those guys. We had a good time. We did very few gigs, but we spent more time rehearsing. I've been in a few bands like that actually. Cool. But those are stories for another visit, right. I think. Okay. But this one's called "Love Is the Answer." This is it was a great. I just want to say it was a great honor to work with Alex Call, co-writing this song with him, because he's written songs for Sheena Easton, Huey Lewis, and the News, and he was in that band. It was. Very famous band in the Bay Area, but they never really got too far out of the Bay Area. Though they spent some time in London and started to make a name for themselves. They were called Clover, and that goes back to the 70s. I remember hearing about them all the time. Unfortunately, I never did see them, but Clover had the band, had the people, had Huey Lewis in the band, had Sean Hopper also from Huey Lewis. It had John McPhee, who's still with the Doobie Brothers. Who's just a wizard of a musician. He plays guitar, fiddle, and pedal steel. He's phenomenal, and I've had a chance to play with John quite often too. And more stories later. But and Alex Call was in this band Clover, and they're a very cool band. And they actually just released an album that John pretty much recorded and produced in John's studio. And I haven't heard it yet. Shame on me, but I got it. Something I have to pick up myself. But anyway, let me get some things together here. Just give me a second.
Don't worry.
See, this is not something I've never performed this before, so I'm going to cheat and get some lyrics in front of me, just so I don't mess it up too bad. Okay, here we go. This is "Love Is the Answer." Underneath threatening skies, thunder in these troubled days, fearful cries and a rain of lies. I ask, what is the way? Love is the answer. Watch over me. No shame in defeated. Gonna set you free. Darkness and light are endless dancers. Fear is the question. Love is the answer. As the anchor strikes, my heart is shaking. Here I stand, a house divided. I cry for all that you've been taken. How can we ever be united? Love is the answer. Watch over me. No shame in defeated. Gonna set you free. say nothing can last. We will wait once again in the light, sing a song of no left and no right. Together we will share the wonder, we will calm the troubled sea. Everyone will come together, oh, the way it used to be. Singing love is the answer, watch over me. No shame in defeated, gonna set you free. Just kidding on the last part. That's a Neil Young ending.
That's great. You know, I gotta say, after you mentioned the Doobie Brothers and you were playing that song, it seemed to me to have a bit of a Doobie Brothers feel to it a little bit.
Yeah, you know that when I play it, it reminds me of that too. It actually reminds me of the song they used to do called "Nobody's." It goes, nobody, nobody gonna take a love away from me. Nobody, nobody gonna take a love away from me.
Yeah,
I always loved that one.
yeah.
That was actually their first. I remember that was like their first song ever on the radio. Well, at least in the Bay Area, that was the first one. That was even before, which is really their first big hit. But
right,
Nobody's. It kind of reminds me of the early Doobie Brothers, even before the Toulouse Street album, which was Listen to Music album. So
the first time I heard the Doobie Brothers was when they were on the Midnight Special.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
And it was a Friday night, and the Doobie Brothers came out playing that
great.
song. Listen to the
They're
music.
still great. They're still great. You know, they're friends of Tower Power, and I actually knew them before I was in Tower Power as well. Tom Johnson, the guy who wrote that song, and listened to the music and all their early hits mostly. I used to teach his son guitar lessons in Marin when I lived in Marin, 20 years ago, and then I was also in his daughter's band. His young daughter had a band. In fact, he called me up and he goes, "Hey, Jerry, put together a rhythm section. I want you to put together a rhythm section for Laura." That's his daughter's name. And Mark Russo is a great sax player from Yellow Jackets and the Doobie Brothers. And I'll have him put together a horn section. In fact, the horn section had Mick Gillette in it from Tower Power.
Oh wow!
So yeah. And so we played some gigs and we would sometimes open for the Doobie Brothers. So I've become friendly with those guys and just a great group of guys and they come to our shows and we go to their shows and that sort of. Last time they were here in Salt Lake City, Gauthier and Ping Ping and I, we went out to see them and hung out with them. Yeah. And you know what? They sound so good still. Their vocals are great. They still play. They're just playing and singing so great.
Yeah.
It's amazing to see.
Yeah.
So.
I want to get back to a little bit of the Tower of Power. Well, first, let's talk about your new album. But your new album, I just want to remind everybody, your new album is going to be called One and the Same.
Yes.
And it will be out later this year.
Yeah.
And you can currently pick up the other one we played off of iTunes. That is from the
ground up.
From the ground up.
Yeah.
Right. Now, I want to get to now a little bit back to the Tower of Power thing, if you don't mind.
No, not at all.
Because you and I talked a little bit about that and the guitar work that you did on the new Tower. And you got another original song that you want to play?
No, I got that song, Cinnamon. I played the ending to Cinnamon Girl on the end of my last song, so I've got that stuck in my head. Can I do that one?
Sure. You want to play Cinnamon Girl?
Yeah, I do. I'd love to. You want to talk about Tower first? You want me to do this? What order do you want to do it in?
Um, let's go ahead and play Cinnamon Girl. Then
Okay.
I'll get all my questions together about the new
Sure.
tower.
Okay, good. I'll give
Uh,
you time. Here we go. I wanna live with a cinnamon girl. Life could be happy the rest of my life with my cinnamon girl. I dream of pictures I run in the night. We see us together, chasing the moonlight, my cinnamon girl. Ten silver sacks is a bass with a bow. The drummer relaxes and waits between shows for the cinnamon girl. I dream of pictures I run in the night. They see us together, chasing the moonlight, my cinnamon girl. Ma send me money now. I need to make it somehow. I need another chance. You see, your baby loves to dance. Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yay! Yay! All right. So, um, Tower of Power and the last record. We were talking a little bit about that this
Uh-huh.
night, and all of the guitar work you do. And as I listen back to all of the songs and all of the records or all the guitar parts you play, uh, tell me a little bit about all of the different tracks. Is there something that we could play off of that record right now that would sort of a snippet of it? What we're talking about, the kind of all the styles, the song that has where you're doing the chicken picking and the comping.
Let's see here. I'll have to look. Just off the top of my head.
Uh,
Uh,
and stylistically, um, that sort of because you were saying you even did a sitar thing on one of the songs.
I did. There's on the last record as well. There's electric. I don't know. I don't know the first thing about sitar, but electric sitar is tuned like a guitar. It just has
Right.
a has a bridge that purposely makes the guitar buzz. So it's an
Oh,
electric sitar.
I got
Yeah, yeah, and we have one on the last record too. It's called "Let It Go." Um, and then on this record, there's a Doc and a gentleman named Nick Lane, great trombonist.
you. Hmm.
Um, and songwriter. Um, they wrote a song called "Who Would Have Thought," and there's electric sitar on that. But that's more of kind of a medium tempo song. If you're talking about the stuff with like the chicken picking and chordal things, and I would probably say the song "Look in My Eyes," which is a song by Rocco Rocco Prestia, the bass player, former bass player, and Tom Schumann, who's a keyboardist with a Spyro Gyra.
Oh, okay.
The two of them wrote that song,
All
and
right.
there's a video of it too that's been circulated around the internet and Facebook and stuff like that.
At some point, I think I can maybe as I learn how all of this goes, I may be able to pull in some video. Uh, I want to play a little bit of "Look in Your Eyes," and then or "Look in My Eyes."
Yeah,
And
look
we
at
can
mine.
talk about guitar work, and we can talk about Joe Vanelli and how all that went with you. That would be
Oh yeah,
great.
sure, you bet.
All right, "Look in My Eyes."
Want me, Lord. Lord have mercy. Hide your feelings to revealing you can't deny. Can't deny that you want me, Lord have mercy. Look in your eyes. Hide your feelings to revealing you can't deny. Can't deny it, baby.
All right, so I got to tell you, as much as I want to keep listening to that, because that is a badass groove, man. And the solo Roger was playing, and I was hearing all of the stuff we were talking about, that that kind of comping you were doing behind the solos, and how, and the that kind of a feel, and everybody's doing it, but nobody, you can pick it all out, but nobody's in each other's way.
Right. And part of another thing that's very Tower-esque is how we cut off the notes. The notes are really short, and on grooves like that, it's like cutting the notes off.
Really,
yeah, it's a lot of, I wouldn't say staccato, but it's just really, cutting things off, just shortening the notes. No legatos, no.
Would you say that from a musician standpoint, that is more of a feel thing than it is actually a choice? Well,
right.
A choice when you learn a certain thing, but it's sort of a feel to play that way.
It very much, it is definitely a feel thing, and it's not something. I mean, you could discuss it intellectually, but it really it comes down to, yes, that is it perfectly, but it has the wrong feel. I mean, there's somebody you could try and play that and cut all those notes off, but it still might not have the right feel.
Right. It's one thing to feel it, and it's one thing to think it.
Right, and it's like, but it's it's like we're cutting the notes off, but it's still pulsating. So
yeah.
So that's the part of the magic,
Right,
so,
right.
That's the unexplained part.
I was asking Dave about that, and he says that feel had more to do with how Rocco played than anything else.
And I can believe that.
Because as a drummer, I was always thinking, Dave has this certain feel, but he said that his style developed pretty much based on how Rocco played. because Rocco played
Yeah.
that, that kind of
Yeah.
feel.
Yeah.
So, but
Yeah.
how many different guitar parts were in? I was hearing a lot of different guitar stuff in there.
Yeah. Well, it starts off with like a clean electric guitar, Strat, and
Right.
playing, and then I also overdubbed and doubled the same single note lines I'm playing with a baritone guitar. So it's a guitar that's tuned down a fifth from a regular guitar. So it starts to get into bass guitar territory. So, but it's not a bass guitar,
Right.
but it is lower than a regular guitar,
Well,
and
and I want to ask, so when you were mixing this record, now last week we were talking a little bit about Joe Vanelli's and how instrumental he was in putting that together. Um, is some of that, was it his idea, or where did the ideas to layer things like that? Where was it you and him sitting and going, maybe we should do this guitar part? How did all of that come about in making the record?
yeah, well, he has a studio in his studio, and he has a bunch of guitars. I mean, he makes most guitar players envious. I mean, he has quite an arsenal of guitars, and so all these the electric sitar belonged to somebody else. It was actually uh, Dave Amato from REO Speedwagon came by and let us use his electric sitar, and then for the next project, Joe said, I better get one of my own. So he bought an electric sitar so we could
Oh,
have it just in case we needed it. And we did on the song
yeah,
that's on this record was played on Joe's, and on the first record it was played on Dave's. But anyway, he has a lot of guitars at his studio. And so he has a baritone guitar. He's got 12-string electric. He has 12-string acoustic. He has different acoustic guitars because there's acoustic guitar on the album as well. And he has acoustic guitar strung with different strings to get a different kind of sound and effect. And
right,
so all that kind of stuff. And we would basically we would take them out of the cases and put them on stands, and we would just go, "What about that one? Or what about this? Hey, or I'd say, can we do double this with a baritone? Or he'd beat me to it and say, hey, why don't you double this with a baritone? Or hey, let's try the 12-string on this. Try the 12-string electric. And he had a nylon string. There's one on the first album that I did with the band, Soul Side of Town.
right,
There's one of Doc's ballads, a really beautiful ballad that Ray Green sings, and I play nylon string fills. And it came out really nice. So we just like break out all these guitars, because I'm the only one there, along with Emilio and Joe. I'm just
right,
overdubbing now. So
yeah,
because my basic parts, the electric guitar parts had been done with the rhythm section,
right,
Roger and David and Rocco.
right. And did Rocco do most of the record?
Yeah, Rocco did the entire record.
Oh,
Yeah,
wow.
Rocco did the Soul Side of Town record and Step Up. He did both those CDs.
So you guys
He's
recorded what, almost 30, over 30 songs for those two records,
Yes, we
right?
did 28 tracks in total.
28.
Yeah, yeah.
Man,
Over
that's
like a 6-year period, between tours and things like that.
yeah.
So yeah, yeah.
The records are so good. That
Thanks.
uh, they're so relevant and so modern and so appropriate today. It's like it brought this is just me talking as a fan. It's like not the old, nothing will ever replace the old Tower, but it now all of a sudden the band it's current, it's relevant, the records are just, they hold up. To me, I mean, I enjoy listening to all of the music. I'm just such a fan. I can't help but geek out. Can't help but
Well,
fan
geek
out.
out.
Yeah,
I do too. I love all the old stuff too, man. I really do. I grew up listening to it, and I remember when I first heard "What Is Hip," I remember thinking, I gotta get a bass. I mean, I love the guitar. Thought the guitar was wonderful. Bruce Conti is just amazing. But I remember picking out a bass and sitting down and trying to learn what Rocco was doing. And then finally, I just remember going, "Oh, forget it."
yeah. I don't. I don't know. There's not never ever been, as far as I know, and is another bass player that can emulate Rocco. I mean,
Yeah.
Rocco will. I mean, there is only one him.
Yeah, that's true. That's definitely true. Mark von Wageningen, our current bass player, does do a wonderful job. You know, he
He's
really does.
really good.
You know, he
I mean,
takes it to another level too, because he has his own thing that he puts his own spin on it too. You know, he's a wonderful musician. You know, he's got a lot. He's got a great background as well. You know,
yeah,
so he
he's an
really
amazing.
does playing jazz and soul and funk and a lot of Latin stuff. You know, so he knows his stuff.
Yeah, yeah,
But yeah, and I, you know, I actually wanted to just uh, mention Bruce Conti because I mentioned Bruce Conti a second ago, but Bruce Conti was actually a big influence on me too. I actually took lessons from him back in the day when he was in Tower when they had all those hits on the radio. I
yeah,
took a
yeah,
couple lessons from him and I learned a lot from him. I remember just sitting down with him the very first time. Uh, he goes, "Well, let's just jam." You know, he had his famous Les Paul Gold Top. You know, I was sitting there
yeah,
just looking at the guitar, going, "Whoa!" And so he goes, "Well, let's do this funk thing in E." And he starts copying for me. He wanted to hear me solo. You know, he wanted to hear
yeah.
what my solos were. You know, and he starts copying, and I had to pause, and I probably had this just crazy grin on my face, but it was like I thought to myself, "There's Tower right there," and he was just,
Right,
you know, I said, I just felt like I'm jamming with Tower Power.
right.
That's what
Oh
it felt like, you know, because he had
man.
such a. And we talk about the feel thing. He had
Mm,
such a phenomenal feel, you know, and so I remember he influenced me as a teacher as well because I remember he was so generous with his time. I
mm.
remember it was supposed to schedule for an hour lesson, and I, hour was up, and I said, "Well, I better get going. I better let you go." And he goes, "Well, one more thing. Let me show you this." And then another 20 minutes would go by, and
Oh,
well, I better let you go. It's like, "Hey, you thirsty? Uh, why don't you come in the kitchen and get something to drink before you leave?" And then the lesson would continue. We just keep talking about, you know, the same subject, basically talking
yeah.
guitar shop, you know, and stand in this kitchen, drink, having a glass of water. And next thing I know, we're sitting back down again and we're playing. And so I'm not kidding. Our lessons were 3 or 4 hours each time.
Wow.
So I went away from that going, that's how you teach. I mean, just, you
Yeah.
know.
That,
And so he was really, like I said, very generous with his time, and he became a good friend, and we've been friends ever since. So,
oh, nice.
and yeah. So it's great to have that connection. So
Jerry,
with
you're
him,
an amazing musician. That and watching you play and hearing you play has always been a pleasure, especially when I was uh, probably the most fun I had was the one gig I did with you guys in Rhode Island in that little tiny theater,
yeah.
and I think I was maybe 3 feet from you.
Oh yeah.
You know, and that was the most fun because as the monitor guy, I was standing like almost in the band, and I could
Yeah.
feel you all more than any other. You know, on some of those gigs, you're off behind the curtains and all that kind of stuff, but I could not help but dance.
Yeah, I remember that theater. That was a fun time, and it was great having you along with us too. I had a great time having you in the band.
Yeah,
It
well,
was really
I
fun.
appreciate it. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. I told you that when you were out there. I was like, hey.
yeah, no, it was everybody in the band is was so fun and so gracious to me, and I appreciate it. And I had my missteps here and there,
Hey, we all do every
right?
night.
I got to share since you're and I've shared this with Tommy. I've had some of those I've had uh, hundreds of concerts and shows, and everything has been great. And then I've had some that where the shit just happens. You can't always. It's how fast you recover, and even though the shit happened and we recovered, to some degree, the fact that any misstep with that band and the mystique and being the fan it was almost crushing. Anybody else I could have like not given a hoot. I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, just. But it was Tower of Power, and any little thing I was just no, don't happen.
Sure.
I'm such a fan, and
Sure.
I will always forever be a fan. And it was there anything else? Because we're at like an hour and 5 minutes.
Hey, all right.
Yeah.
Nice.
So
Well,
is
thank
there
you.
anything else that you wanted to mention or talk about,
No, I
or
think we covered it. Thank you. Thank you very much for having me. I really appreciate it.
I do, and I didn't say anything. I didn't want to interrupt you because you were talking, but you know who chimed in was Jerry. I mean Roger
Oh,
Smith.
oh, he did, huh?
Yeah, he said great interview. Good going, guys.
Oh,
Never
cool.
you give us the thumbs up.
Oh, great.
So,
Yay, Roger.
yeah.
Love and peace to Roger.
As a matter of fact,
Love Roger Smith.
as I watch people post their own things, I think, oh, I want to get those guys on and talk to those guys.
Yeah.
Because from my point of view, I have a lot of friends that kind of know music, but this is like we're talking in the green room. Maybe the kind of things that somebody would walk up and sit next to you and want to ask you, like, hey, what about this and what about that?
Yeah.
And so we get to do a little bit of that here on these little interviews I do, and I so appreciate your time. And this one, went way better and sounds way better. Rich Armstrong, Rich, right?
I love Rich Armstrong. Great trumpet player.
He's not too bad. As a matter of fact,
great singer too.
No, he's a badass mofo.
Yeah.
So, and I know we're going long, but now since I see he popped up and I know he's listening, I did an interview with Pat Johnson, a guitar player from the Bay Area. And
I know Pat.
Everybody knows Pat, right? Yeah. I mean, he's the shit, right?
Yeah.
And a friend of his had friended me on Facebook after he saw the interview and started posting stuff. And he posted a YouTube video of Boz Scaggs. And guess who's in the band? Rich Armstrong. And what is the first thing they show? They show him playing tambourine. They show his hand on the tambourine, just doing this. I'm like, there's only one trumpet player that I know will do that.
No, he's a great musician. Too bad they only got his hand shaking a tambourine.
Right, he's got his shakers, he's got his tambourine, and then occasionally he picks up a horn and plays a horn.
He's very, very good.
All right, so Jerry, we're gonna wrap it up, and I'm going to take it out. I want to take it out because I love this Tower of Power record, and the same song that we started with is how I end my interviews with, and it's off the latest Step Up CD. And let's also mention the video. When's the video coming out for Tower of Power?
Well, that's already out. It's Look in My Eyes. That's out. You can see that it's on YouTube. It's
okay.
On social media. I posted it. I think, yeah.
Okay, so people have got to tune into that and check that out. So here we go. I'm going to close out the show. Thank you, Jerry Cortez from Tower of Power. Thank you for playing your songs and spending the time with me today. And
Thank you, Jeff.
We're gonna wrap it up with this.